Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us on today's webinar. The topic for today is the Net Zero 2030 initiative in Australia and how the NCC, or National Construction Code, changes will affect the building and construction industry. The Net Zero Initiative 2030 Australia is an ambitious bipartisan commitment to reduce emissions to net zero by the year 2030. The initiative was announced back in 2017 by the Australian government, and it has got all the support of all major political parties in Australia. It's part of our global effort to reduce emissions, limit global warming, and secure a safe climate for the future. The initiative is in line with the Paris Agreement and aims to limit warming to 1.5 degrees. As a host of this webinar, I'm delighted to welcome you all here today. My name is Tim Graham of Hotspotting, and I'm especially pleased to introduce our guest speaker for today, Josh Cunningham. Josh is the General Manager of Hermitage Homes, and he's an expert in the building and construction industry. And as an award-winning builder, Hermitage Homes have been working closely with the relevant authorities to ensure they will be well placed to adapt to the NCC changes as they come into effect. Today's webinar will run for roughly 45 minutes. Some of the topics we're going to cover include what is the NCC, what are the changes and why are they coming into play at all, and how is it going to affect the building and construction industry. At the end of our presentation, there will be an opportunity to ask questions. It's important to note that not all states and territories are adopting these changes immediately, but Josh will be able to discuss who this will affect and when as he goes through his presentation with us today. I hope you all enjoy the webinar and come away with a better understanding of the Net Zero 2030 initiative and the NCC changes. So without further ado, let's get started. Josh, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Tim. It's great to be here and looking forward to going through all the changes with everybody.
Very good. Tell us, look, before we get started, obviously Hermitage Homes, a Melbourne builder. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so Hermitage has been within the industry for the last 25 years and been building since 1997. So we've got a really good footprint within the Melbourne market. We've been established here for a long time, and we sort of pride ourselves on providing the best customer service to the clients in the sense of communication, build quality, and a raft of other things. So from our point of view, it's a really stronghold for us. But we've got really good connections within the land industry as well. So being able to source and supply really high quality land and dealing directly with financial planners, well creators, that type of stuff. So our product ranges from a 13 square single story all the way up to a 45 square double story. And we're catering to the investor market as well as the owner occupier market, which has been good. And over the last few years, Melbourne's seen varying different things happen within the market, but the NCC changes are definitely something that's going to be a big topic for everyone to be sort of focusing on over the next, or in the next short term, really.
Yeah, well, look, based on our people coming in for the webinar today, we've had a really good engagement especially from our B2B audience. Obviously, it's going to affect consumers as well, but first and foremost, the B2B audience. So I know you prepared a presentation for us today. If you'd like to share your screen, let's get into it.
Perfect. Just double checking you can see that.
Coming up now. There we go. Gotcha.
Yeah, perfect. So as you discussed, Tim, we're just running through the NCC changes and what they are. So to kick things off, what is the National Construction Code? So the Australian Building Codes Board sets the National Construction Code, or the NCC. So the NCC sets out the requirements for the design and construction of buildings within Australia. So the major changes that are coming forward are the accessibility standards and livable housing designs, as well as the 7-star energy rating to all homes. So we'll dive into all of these different things. It's important to note that there's a number of discussions that are going on within different states. So every state is definitely different. Some are taking on these NCC changes immediately, and some are taking them on over a period of time. And there's also discussions of whether the ABCB board is going to be going ahead with everything straight away. So the accessibility standards, I think, are still up for a little bit of discussion, but the 7-star energy rating to lower the emissions, I think, is pretty much coming in and nearly guaranteed to be coming in. But all of that we'll discuss throughout this presentation here. So to give everybody a bit of a rundown on the timeline, in August to October in 2021, the NCC 2022 public consultation period started, and that's obviously coming through these changes. Mid-2022, the ABCB board approved the NCC changes. May 23 this year, so the 1st of May, the changes will come into effect and or are finalised. So essentially what that's saying is, as I said, there's a number of things that are potentially not coming in. The accessibility may be delayed for a period of time, depending on affordability or a number of different factors, but they'll be finalised as of the 1st of May, and then come October, everything will be in place. So any contracts that are essentially signed past that October point will have to adhere to whatever the new NCC changes are going to be.
So essentially from May, we know exactly what the changes are, and then from October, whatever has been agreed upon would become active.
Correct. That's exactly right. Yeah. So we're in discussions with a number of people, and from our point of view, with the business relations that we've got with these financial planners and people looking to get into the market, we're having the discussions of, look, if you're looking to buy into Melbourne and Victoria being one of the locations that is adopting all of the NCC changes at this point in time, as well as some other states. But we're telling people that, look, these changes will have a fairly dramatic effect, in the sense that there'll definitely be price points that will be increased. There'll be definitely design changes and some potential designs that won't be able to come into the market anymore based on these changes that are coming through from the NCC. So we're having these discussions with people to try and alert them of the fact of, if anyone's looking to be buying, they should be really getting into it now. Understand interest rates and those types of things are challenging for everybody, but it really is something.
I mean, after all of the challenges that have been thrown at builders after the last 2 years, this is just another one to deal with. So I can see what you mean.
100%. And look, it's for every builder, it's a huge task to go through all of their design catalogue to then understand exactly what they need to put in place, whether they're changing designs, whether they're putting in additional inclusions. And again, we'll run through some of that today. But it really is a big task for every builder to go through, and it's something that we're not taking lightly. We've taken the front foot, and we've been on this whole journey with the NCC changes throughout the last couple of years. And we've been making sure we're ahead of the curve in the sense of our drafting and estimating team. We're already going through design changes on our end. We're making sure we're ready for October, no matter what. Obviously, the changes are still yet to be finalised, but we're getting prepared because these changes are going to be coming in. It's sort of a matter of
when.
Yeah,
fair enough.
So to go through the accessibility standards first. So some of the major changes that are going to be coming in for the accessibility standards, and in particular to the designs, are things like wider doors, wider hallways, one bathroom has to meet accessibility standards, step-free entry, and reinforced walls. So just to very quickly dive into all of those different things. Wider hallways, we're going from an 820 mil door to an 870 mil door. So that's essentially to get wheelchair access in and out and make sure that you've got the accessibility there. Wider hallways, exactly the same thing. We want to make sure we can get wheelchair access in and around to all particular areas of the home. One bathroom to meet accessibility standards. So whether that is the ensuite or whether that's the shared bathroom, one bathroom has to meet those accessibility standards. And again, essentially basing it on accessibility, one of those bathrooms has to be someone has to be able to either get a wheelchair in or have the ability to access and get to all parts of that bathroom, whether it's a toilet, shower, vanity, those types of things. So again, these are significant changes. The step-free entry is something that's going to be very difficult for people to, or builders in particular, to be really honing in on, because the selection of lots that people now have to go towards, if you're going to a 3-metre lot, it's going to be very difficult on how you make that step-free entry. Are you going to be doing a large amount of cut and fill, or are you going to be doing it step-free from the sort of porch area straight into the house or in between the garage? So again, these are all things that we're working towards. And the reinforced walls are essentially to put in grab rails for the future. We're not having to put in grab rails or anything like that immediately, but the infrastructure has to be there. So if they're getting retrofitted out, they're not taking the plaster down and putting in the walls either between the noggins or putting a bit of ply in there. Everything is in there to begin with. So again,
we're almost building 50% of an NDIS home. And
pretty
what
much
doesn't make sense to me, Josh, is that, we make the doors wider, make the hallways always wider, the bathrooms, but I can get my wheelchair into the house. But then once I get to the kitchens and I get to any other parts of the home, it's still not designed for wheelchair friendly. You know, I'm talking bench heights and all those types of things. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, so I think it gets into the point of what type of rating you're wanting to go into from an NDIS build. So yes, there's some NDIS components behind it, and it's sort of getting to the point where it's not necessarily the high physical support sort of side. With the high physical support, you have to be able to get wheelchair access into the vanities and stuff like that, where they're able to get under and those types of things. This is a mix between NDIS and elderly support, so that they have the ability to be able to get in there. So it's a bit of a component of that, but it's not 100% geared towards it. It's more geared towards sort of aging demographics and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, well, that's a big part, and it's something that's not talked about enough, is the aging population and how that's going to affect housing.
Yeah, correct. So to jump into the designs now, if you're looking for a standard 22 square design,
I suppose for the viewers, there's two parts to these changes. One is the accessibility standard, which you've just gone through, and the next part is more in the way of the energy. With these design and accessibility standard, this is going to be true from, if all of this goes into effect from sort of a September, October, all of what you're about to talk about has to happen on every new build. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So, and again, depending on different states, from my understanding, it's Victoria and ACT that are going ahead with it. I'm primarily focused in Victoria, as we touched on. Hermitage building in all parts of Melbourne Metro, Ballarat, Geelongs, and some other regional areas, Gippsland regions. So all of the Victorian locations, they're going to be having to comply with these standards. Again, whether that's October 1st or whether that's a little bit later, depending on what the ABCB go ahead with the board. But again, it's coming in at some point. It's just a matter of when. So with the standard 22 square design, now all of this sort of ties into affordability and a number of different things. With the standard 22 square design, there's minimal changes that need to happen because we're able to get onto a bigger block. There is room to move and those types of things. So this is just to give an example. So this is our Wentworth 22, which is one of our best-selling designs within the Hermitage catalogue. So the changes here are in the blue sort of section. And we've obviously got to make the door wider. We've had to reconfigure the bathroom area. So that bathroom area now, as you can see, in comparison to into the top sort of section here, the bathroom is difficult to be able to get accessibility, and we don't have enough clearance on this side to be able to get to the toilet. So yes, we have easy access into the shower and the vanity, but we're struggling to then get to the toilet area. So the changes that we've made to make it easy to be able to get to the toilet, easy to be able to get to the vanity and get into the shower. So we've had to reconfigure that ensuite, that bathroom to obviously comply. We've then had to widen the doors, the hallways. We've had to reduce the size of the bedrooms because of increasing the size of the hallways and the doors. Reductions to bedrooms have come into play, and then reducing the size of the pantry. So again, from someone who's, whether they're an investor or an owner occupier, you are limiting some spaces. Well,
it's got to come from somewhere.
It's exactly right. But if you were to buy now, people are wanting larger bedrooms. They're wanting more space. That's ideally what they're wanting. So these changes that are coming in will reduce the space. As you said, it's got to come from somewhere. But these are the things and the discussions that we're having with all of our groups of, hey, look, you should be looking to get into the market now if you can, obviously, because these changes will come in and they will have effect on potential rental yield or appreciation and a number of different things. So, but to get back to the point of, for a standard 22 square design, there's not a huge amount of change. The biggest change is when you come into the smaller designs. So this is one of Hermitage's best-selling designs for a price point. So when particular people are looking to get the best price point and maximize their yield, this is our 17 square home. It's called Gamma 17. It fits on a relatively small and compact block, which means that the land price is cheaper again, and you get some great yields in it, in the fact that you've got a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car option. So for this particular design, there's nearly no way that we, in its current form, that we can meet the accessibility standards with this. And the reasons for that are, if you can sort of see my mouse here, we have to widen the door here. This hallway we would have to widen again, which would mean that the walk-in wardrobe would get smaller and smaller. From an ensuite point of view, we're not sure if we can reconfigure that to be able to meet accessibility standards. And likewise in here, we have to be 1.2 meters from the toilet. So this door obviously isn't 1.2 meters. There's not 1.2 meters of clearance in that toilet there. So
but as block sizes continue to get smaller as well, this is going to become a hell of a lot more difficult.
100%, Tim. And that's, again, it gets down to the major point of, like, from an affordability standpoint, people are, with borrowing capacities the way that they currently are, with interest rates being high and land pricing going up and build pricing going up, it is going to get very difficult, because even if you look at the smaller homes on an 8.5 by 21 as an example, it's going to make it extremely difficult to be able to get 3 bedrooms on there. Not impossible, but it will make it difficult. There's going to have to be some design elements and design changes to make sure that we're able to get either the best yield or the best house or the best capital growth or the best livability spaces for everybody. There is going to have to be some design changes. So whether that means that builders have to reduce the amount of builds that they're going ahead with. So we've got a catalogue of around 40 different designs that people can select. We'll be reducing that, because there just will be some designs that we won't be able to proceed forward with in the market based on these things coming in. So as you said, there's 2 components of it. There's the accessibility standard, and then there's the 7-star energy rating. I know within our team here at Hermitage, the drafting team isn't overly worried about the accessibility. It's definitely one component of it, but the 7-star energy ratings are something that are giving us the biggest nightmares internally. So the reason for that are, and I'll jump into that, but the major components of change is to the 7-star energy rating. To achieve we have to achieve 7-star energy rating on the NatHERS. So that is essentially just going through the basis that we have to hit, or we're having to reduce the carbon emissions, and the NatHERS is based on that. So I'll go through a couple of other things, but I'll come back to that. So the whole of home energy rating is something that we have to comply to. This is like an add-on or a bolt-on to the NatHERS, and the whole of home is a separate rating to NatHERS and goes through the appliances, the lightings, if you've got a swimming pool and you've got a pump, or a number of different things. So where the NatHERS is reducing the carbon emission because you've got heaters or air conditioners or things like that, we know that that's always going to happen. The whole of home is trying to offset that carbon emission by making sure that all the appliances and everything like that are going to try and bring that rating down. But you have to comply to both of those. And then the conduct thermal bridging testing. So this is a bit of a confusing one to try and explain, but I'll try and do my best. So what it is the energy that's transferred from the frame, from outside of the frame to the inside of the home. So the best way of explaining it is and I know you're an amazing cook, Tim, but if you've got a fry pan and you've got 2 fry pans, one with a wooden handle and one with a metal handle, when you're cooking, you'll know that the metal handle will conduct heat a little bit more, that it's either going to be hot or it's going to be warm. Whereas with the wooden handle, you're able to pick it up very, very easily. So the thermal bridging is essentially going through those testings to be able to find out what the heat transfer is from the frame from outside to inside, and be able to go through that. So
I suppose the one question I'd ask on that point, Josh, is that there has been, especially with all of the trade supply issues in recent times, there has been a bit of a pivot from timber trusses to steel. How is that going to affect your thermal bridging testing? I'd imagine it's going to conduct more.
Yeah, it does. So I'm definitely not the expert in knowing exactly what the thermal bridging or like what the ratings will be. But there is a difference between timber frames and steel frames. Steel frames aren't as eco-friendly as the wooden frames for conducting heat in between, or from the outside of the home in between the frame and then to the inside of the home. So there is definitely benefits to timber frames in that regard. Obviously, steel frames, a lot of people are going towards that for a number of different reasons, warranties and stuff like that. But yeah, it definitely will have an effect.
Okay, very good.
So this just goes through the NatHERS rating and everything like that. And why this graph is important and what I sort of wanted to touch on is if you currently have a 2-star house, or if your home is a 2-star rated home, you could put $5,000 into the home and you could probably get to a 5-star rating. But the further we go along the rating system, the more cost you have to put into the home to get there. So from 5 to 6 is difficult in the sense of there's redesign that has to happen, that there's a number of different things that have to go on, but it can get there. To get from 6 to 7 creates more complexities, and to get from 7 to 8 and so on just creates further and further complexities and further costs that are associated with it. So the aim and what we're being told, Energy Advanced did a fantastic training with us just recently, but what the aim is to get to 8.5-star homes within a short period of time, whether that's 20.
But the ultimate goal is that we're trying to get to 10-star rating, aren't we?
Well, yeah, whether it, like, again, getting to 10-star, I think is going to be difficult, but ultimately we're wanting to, as a country, try and reduce our emissions. So it's going to be trying to get as close as we can to that, but the effects of price points and affordability, again, that's something that all the government lobbyists and everything like that have to be having discussions about. But to get from 6 to 7 isn't easy in any comparison. It's definitely doable, and as I said, our team's doing it, but it is the major thing in these NCC changes that are giving our team headaches. So to go through a little bit more of that, so what we have here is another thing that's coming into play, and what every builder is going to have to do, and whether you're a financial planning group that's working with Hermitage already, or you're wanting to work with Hermitage, or you're an owner-occupier that's going out and trying to get a home, selecting your lot is now going to become more and more important, whether it's religious reasons where you're looking at north or east facing lots, or for whatever reason, selecting any particular lot will have an effect to the 7-star energy ratings, because we're going to have to make sure that it complies for each particular lot and location, and where the shading's going to be, where the sunlight's going to come in, and a number of different things. So selecting your lot is going to be one of the most important things for anyone.
So it goes to say that you would, this is going to have a backflow effect all the way back to the property developers in the way that they're designing and selling their blocks, you'd imagine. Well,
that's exactly right, yeah. And if obviously all components of the NCC changes come in, then it's going to have a huge effect on land developers, because if there's going to be limited amount of homes that can fit on an 8.5 by 21, as an example, what are they going to do with those blocks? If there's lot where they're facing south and they're negatively affected by the 7-star energy rating, well, how are we going to work with that? And again, these are all discussions that we as a team are having internally, and I'm sure every builder across the nation is discussing. But selecting the lot is definitely going to be on topic of everybody's on topic of every builder's sort of mind. So this is just a typical design. I've just ripped this design off. It's not a Hermitage one or anything like that. It's just a design to just go through the sort of typical house design, and we'll go through some of the changes later. But to give you an idea of the 7-star energy rating, so this is just a typical house. You've got R4 ceiling installation. You've got R2.5 bat installations around the house and everything like that. You've got single glazing and a concrete slab. When we go through the changes and everything like that, this is the type of energy report that we're getting before we're obviously getting to site. So it's important to note that before we can get building permit, we have to comply with the energy standards. So that's where this all comes to play, is that we have to get those energy standards ticked off before we get our building permit. But as you can see here, the dwelling's too cold within the entry and in the kitchen and meals. So this is where we have to then, from a design point of view, have to go, okay, well, how do we get airflow into those areas? How can the heating and cooling be distributed? How are we then going to be able to change the window sort of set up in our designs, and a number of different things to try and bring all of that down. So it seems like we're going to that real extra step of making sure that we're not trying to use the heater and the air conditioner and all those type of things to heat the home. We're trying to make it as evenly distributed as possible, which is a big sort of factor of it. So going into sort of this sort of side. And as I sort of said, these are the areas that were highlighted. So the free flow of conditioned air is being wasted in this particular area. So in the entry area, this area increases the overall volume of air needed to be heated and cooled throughout the home. And then in that kitchen area, covered northern aspect and glazing is stopping the winter sun from warming the home. So there is an outdoor area within this section here, and whether the eaves have to be smaller to be able to get the sunlight in and those types of things. So there's compromises that people are going to have to make along the design process journey to be able to comply within the 7-star sort of rating. And again, these are all sort of different factors that are going to be coming into play. So from a point of view of what do you need to be doing, or what are the 3 main things that we need to be looking at to improve the overall performance of every particular home? Insulation is going to be one thing, but again, that costs money. So like we said, with a typical home, you may have R4 bats within the ceiling. You may have to go to R6, R7 or something like that. All of these things have an additional cost. Same within the walls, you may have to go from 2.5 to 4 to 5, whatever it is, depending on the design, depending on the how it's situated within the block, depending on the orientation. All of those different things then come into play. Glazing is going to be a big one, and obviously going to be the most costly when it comes down to that. So if you're having to go down the double glazing path to be able to meet these standards, it's going to cost a significant amount of money to be able to double glaze your house. Now, if you're someone, and again, if you're an investor with a small home, it's going to cost you a significant amount. But if you're someone that's looking to build a 45, or our Burton 40 as an example in our design, fantastic double-story design. But if you're looking to build that, there's going to be a massive cost going to windows in that. So again,
just thinking, I mean, the mainstream, I call them stadium builders, all the big builders that are doing volume, you might have, 30 different floor plans, and you go ahead and you make sure that you've got the right energy rating for those, and away you go. But for these custom builders, doing the smaller jobs and doing them custom, there must be an enormous amount of work to go into the design phase on, their builds moving forward. I feel from that it's going to be a very expensive exercise.
Yeah, 100%. And just being able to explain it to clients of like, no, your eaves are going to have to be, it's so hard for people to understand. If you've got a 600 mil eve or a 450 mil eve, whatever it is, but to go back to the client and say, no, you can't have that, and trying to explain to them why they can't have it. Like, well, I'm paying for it, I want it, like I've got the money, let's proceed forward. No, well, the energy rating won't work. We've got to make sure we get the winter sunlight in and stuff like that. They're all conversations that every builder is going to have, whether they're custom or volume. It's going to be something that everyone's going to face. And the next sort of thing, and the thing we've been touching on, is design as well. So depending on the orientation of the block and everything like that, the design will change, whether the master bedroom's at the front of the house or at the back of the house, depending on orientation. Again, where the windows are situated may mean that there may have to be a flip option towards where the kitchen's located and bedrooms and those types of things. And there's a huge amount of work that has to go into it. And what I'm sort of going through here is just really the tip of the iceberg.
It sounds like it.
There's a huge amount of work that needs to go into it. And again, if anyone is wanting more information, obviously we'll go through that in a second, but please reach out. But again, we sort of, the reason we're touching on it, and that's something that was obviously sent out on all the email campaigns and the LinkedIn sort of stuff, is the final overview of why you should be buying now versus in 12 months. The pricing is probably going to be the number one thing. So if you're going through the accessibility standards and the 7-star energy rating, depending on your orientation, depending on all of the different factors, you could have a $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 increase, depending on the design of the house and a number of other things. But again, there's significant costs. If you're an investor, which is again sort of what the Hermitage market deals a fair bit with, we're sort of 70% investor and 30% owner occupier, maximizing your yield. So as we went through before with the Gamma 17, there's a huge potential without a massive amount of work that we might not be able to get a 4-bedroom on a 12.5 by 25 block anymore. It may be a 3-bedroom. And what that's going to do from a rental yield point of view is hit your rental yield. Your design and lot restrictions, you're going to be very restricted on obviously picking lots, and it's going to be something that you're going to have to work through, not just with the builder, but also if you are an owner-occupier that's going to a land sales office, whether that's, again, in Hermitage's estates, in Springridge Estate in Wallen or Skylark in Melton South.
Great plug.
Great plug there. But you're going to have to be very specific on your lot restrictions that you're going ahead with. So they're all things that you're going to have to do. And again, the design of the home and appreciation is something that's, I think, not spoken about enough. But if you can't get a 4-bedroom on your 12.5 by 25 anymore, you're going to have better appreciation if you bought now than obviously what you buy in the future, because those things may become the commodity. The smaller homes maybe become the commodity where you've got a better design, you've got a better rental yield. People may want that more. So your appreciation is definitely something to take into effect. So these are all the discussions that we're discussing with every group that we're working with, every buyer that's coming through our doors, yourself included. So we're having these discussions pretty much on a daily basis with our team and with everyone. And as I said, the design and estimating team are working tirelessly on trying to make sure that everything's affordable for everybody. But for anyone who's got any further questions or anything like that, please feel free to reach out either to myself or to Tim at Hotspotting or whoever it is, your financial planner, your wealth creator. Like we're here to assist with the whole process. But I wouldn't be waiting too long, because if the changes do come in or when the changes come in, it's going to impact everybody.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that, Josh. We have got a few questions to get through, and a couple of them are sort of double up, so I'll cover them together in a moment. But just on the subject of price rises with building, it's obviously the last couple of years we've just seen it's like every month it's jumping up, month after month, the cost to construct. So off the back of that price growth over the last couple of years, it's getting harder and harder to get into the market with borrowing capacities coming down, cost to build to go up. So with this as an extra expense, it does make a lot more sense to be buying now than it does to be waiting in 12 months time, or if we start to move into the higher energy efficiencies again of the 8-star ratings and things, it's only going to continue to go up, isn't it?
Correct. Yeah, that's exactly right. And again, I understand everybody's situations are currently now different with what's going on with borrowing capacities and those types of things. So yeah, we touch on it with everybody, and it's if you can afford it and if you can proceed forward. A lot of people are really worried about, I want to wait to see when interest rates are going to start to either stabilise or decrease or whatever it is. I don't think that's the issue anymore. I don't think waiting to find out when they're going to stabilise or decrease, and whether that comes in sooner rather than later, there's a number of discussions around that in every media outlet. I think the real thing is trying to get in before something like this comes in, saving 0.25% on an interest rate, or having to spend 30 to 50 grand on these changes. I'd be wanting to get in now. And then again, they're all things that everybody has to be discussing, whether it's you're looking to grow your property portfolio, whether it's you're a young family that's wanting to purchase a home and grow with and stuff like that. These are significant discussions for you to be having around the round table at home of why now, because it's a big reason.
Yeah, I 100% agree. We'll move across to a couple of questions now. I'll go with our first question that we had today. Is Rob Chambers, is the cutoff for NCC and 7-star based on the contract signing date? So Josh, to your knowledge, obviously, if we were to sign a contract prior to that date, it would be grandfathered under that contract. That contract wouldn't have to be then changed to meet the new standards. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, correct. So again, we're expecting that we're going to see a huge amount of influx of contracts signed in that September sort of month period, and everything leading up to it, obviously. Yeah. But yeah, anything that's signed beforehand, we're under the understanding from everything or everyone that we've spoken to and everything that we've read, that they will be grandfathered over. If any contracts that are signed after October 1st, then obviously the new requirements have to come into play. So for anybody out there, get your contract signed, deposits paid. Let's get
it's worth noting that as you mentioned earlier in the presentation, it's not just around the build that you need to be thinking about, though. If you're buying a block of land now, and then you're not signing a build contract until after that date, the build that you're choosing has got to meet the requirement of that block under the new standards as well.
Correct. Yeah, it's the building standards, not necessarily the land sort of standards behind it. But again, going back to that land component, and it's not just about the size of the block,
Orientation and
the orientation. It's also about the fall. So like we've had instances where we've been building homes that have been 1 to 2 meters of fall. To try and meet that requirement of step free is going to be difficult. Like how much cut and fill do you do? How much retaining wall do you have?
Yep.
There's additional costs in there. How do you meet the stepless or the step free section of the accessibility standard? So again, they're all things that people have got to be discussing.
Yeah. Next question from Monique. He had 2 questions for Josh. The first one, I think we just answered. That was the same question that Rob had. The second question is, would you know if New South Wales is accepting these in full as well? Now, I know you're based in Victoria, but do you happen to know how New South Wales is addressing this?
I don't think so. The 7-star energy rating, from again my understanding, and I could be wrong, apologies if I am. From my understanding, the 7-star energy rating is going ahead across all states. I'm fairly confident of that. New South Wales isn't proceeding forward with the accessibility standards as of, again, what was initially told to Victoria was that Victoria was going to be accepting the changes, and anything that happened post October 1st, the accessibility standards came in. Now, whether that changes could be varied, but I think no matter what, New South Wales will be going ahead with it. Again, it's just a matter of when. So it might not be October 1st, or it may be next year or the year after, but these are things that I think every state will be adopting. It's, again, more of a matter of when, but I don't have the exact answer for you about New South Wales and the dates. I apologise.
Okay. For any of our viewers that are interstate and wanting to know about the local laws there, where would be the best place that they could go to, Josh? Would there master builders for each state be a good place to start?
Yeah, master builders, HIA's got a number of literature that's online. Yeah, like a lot of that. Like, again, from a 7-star energy rating point of view, as I said earlier, we had a really good meeting with Energy Advance, which did a huge amount of training with all of our staff. So there's definitely people out there to be speaking to, and I'd be trying to get your head around it as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Okay, next question from Alistair. Do these changes apply to medium density buildings, example, townhouses and units?
Great question. From our understanding and from what's been projected out into the market, yes. That they will be enforced into those sort of things. I don't quite understand how they're going to be implemented, in the sense of when you're looking at medium density, it's very hard to configure configure that to be able to meet all of those standards. We've also been told that it may be applicable to apartments, which again will be very difficult if you're an apartment developer. You've bought something, you yield on the amount of apartments that are going into the market. But from our understanding, yes. Again, primarily Hermitage is focused on the detached builds. So I'm not 100%, but everything that we've read and have been discussing internally, we're under the assumption that medium density will be affected by these standards.
Yeah, would make sense. Good question here from Wilson Lorimer. Josh, what level of the NCC changes relate to new versus existing? So for an example, if you're going to do a renovation on a property post-October, or adding on an extra room, for instance, would these these new changes apply to those renovations?
Again, it's been said that they will apply to the existing home and renovations. I don't.
It would have to, it would have to be applicable to that type of room as well. If you're putting on a
exactly. I don't understand how exactly they're going to work that, in the sense of, does just that particular room have to meet either accessibility or 7-star? But from what we've been told, renovations will have to comply. But again, I don't understand exactly how that's going to work. Not because we're not necessarily in it. It's confusing.
Look, I think my recommendation to Wilson would be, when you are, talking to builders about your renovations, ask them, are they across these new NCC changes? That'd be a good start. And the second place would be, obviously, your local council to approve those permits would be, across these new changes as well. So, and the third part as a recommendation would be, do your renovation before then anyway.
100%.
Now, the next question we had was from, actually it's anonymous, but in terms of the cutoff for these changes in Victoria, what actually needs to be in place before October 23 to avoid? And will fixed price contract or approved plans with council be sufficient?
Again, from our understanding, yes. There's still more literature that has to come out. As I said, as of May 1st, sorry, everything will be finalised and formalised. In that documentation, we're hoping that everything is crystal clear for us. At the minute, it's still very murky in the sense of what's needed.
Yeah.
From our understanding, you won't necessarily need to have plans and permits approved. You'll just need to have contracts signed and created to say that you're proceeding forward with this particular build. If that's the case, the fixed price contract will then stay in play because it's all of the information that you have, you've got within your tender and your contract. It's all exactly the same. So there should be no changes within the fixed price contract there. It's only if obviously that changes. But again, we don't have that information just yet.
Yeah, I mean, my educated guess would be to treat it similar to any other change in real estate. If you sign a contract, it's from the contract date and the laws that apply at that time. Yeah. Another question we had is there any risk that the government will make you retrofit to these standards in the future? So maybe best to just do it now. So I suppose the question would be, if you were to build a home today, even prior to these standards, are you better off building the house to that spec now? It's probably a good question.
Look, it's a great question. The biggest thing you've got to think about is mainly for your financial benefit and what your outcome is and what you're wanting to do. Yeah. If you're an owner occupier that's looking to live in there for 10 years, then potentially it is worth you putting in all of these requirements and setting out all these requirements early days. If you're an investor that's trying to maximize your yield and maximize your appreciation and lower your overall cost, I wouldn't think so. So it would get down to everyone's individual circumstances and why they're building a home. Yeah.
There's another one here, which is actually a good question to ask now, because I actually had this on my questions, which is, have build prices come back off the peak that we've seen over the last 2 years? We were seeing, build price after build price increase. In your experience at the moment, what's happening in relation to build prices? And the second part of that question would be in relation to trade supplies and supply chains. These have been the biggest topics in the building industry over the last 2 years. Where are we sitting at the moment, Josh?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things there, but from a supply chain point of view, some things are getting easier and some things are getting harder is the best way to explain it. Timber, 6 to 9, 12 months ago was the biggest issue for every builder in Australia, getting the timber to be able to put the frames up and those types of things. There's not as much of an issue around that sort of space anymore, but the supply issues are now becoming more towards trades more than anything else. So getting bricklayers, getting plasterers, that's because that's where every job across Victoria and the nation has now progressed to. So trade costs have definitely gone up. Supply costs have somewhat stabilised and maybe getting a little bit cheaper, but trade costs are going up to get roof tilers, to get brickies, to get plasterers, to get painters. Those types of things are definitely still tough. Yeah.
I think that's probably about all we've got time for. There were quite a few questions we didn't get to, but what I will do, Josh, is I'll share the questions from our audience with you, along with their contact details, which they would have given us as they registered. So if there's any of those people that you can reach back out to, a lot of these questions are state-based though. So I would urge people that if you are looking for more information about this, you will need to go to your local master builder or your AHA to find these questions. But the last thing I would say on that subject is everything we've talked about today, it isn't locked in stone. We've got still got until April, May to find out exactly how these things will come into effect. But I think the topic today has brought in a really big crowd, Josh, and I can see by a few of the names, there's a lot of B2B people there that were interested in this topic. So I really appreciate you putting together that presentation for us today and sharing your time with us.
No problem. Thank you. And as Tim said, if there's anything else the Hermitage can assist with or from a question standpoint, please feel free to reach out. But thank you. And we'll go from there.
Excellent. To all the viewers, thank you very much for that. If you have any other questions, as Josh mentioned, please feel free to reach out to Josh. And you're also welcome to reach out to me at tim@hotspotting.com.au. Until next time, stay safe and we'll chat to you all soon. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.